Now, the truth is that tonight never really mattered that much for Liverpool, did it, given they could only ever finish third in the Premier League table. And Aston Villa, meanwhile, are all about trying to qualify for the Champions League, so absolutely had something to play for tonight. But that doesn't mean that it's not hugely frustrating for Liverpool fans, the way that their team has thrown away the win tonight when they were in such a comfortable position, a difficult ground to go to, admittedly, but they've done the hard work to get themselves into a position to win the game, and as I say, absolutely throw it away with the performance in the final moments and only end up coming away with a 3-3 draw. And for me, it was a performance and a result really that has kind of summed up this season as a whole. I think even when Liverpool got themselves into that promising position and all the build up to that, actually that the game as a whole, the entire 90 minutes, you never really truly felt like they were a team that were in control of the game. They never felt like they were keeping Aston Villa at arm's length. It always felt like the hosts were going to get a chance and get chances, actually. And as I say, I feel like that's been a bit of a story of the campaign as a whole. Even when things have been going really well for Liverpool this season, it's always kind of felt at times like they've been on the right side of a risk-reward ratio that Jurgen Klopp had kind of, at the start of the season, had shook hands on. This is how we're going to play. It's going to be extremely aggressive. There are some downsides, some potential downsides in that you can't really control games as frequently as you want to, but with the quality we've got in attack, we can blow most teams away. And to be fair, you look at the points Liverpool have got on the board, he's been mostly right for much of this season. You can't argue with that. It's got them back up to third, having finished outside the Champions League places. And even in this game alone, obviously they got themselves to a position where they were 3-1 up. And as I say, Villa is a very, very tough place to go. And to get yourself in that position shows that the approach Liverpool were taking, it has some merit. But as I say, it's risk and reward, and sometimes that risk comes back to bite you. And we've seen that in recent weeks of Liverpool. That's been the reason they've fallen away in the title race, when the finishing hasn't quite been there. They haven't been able to control games and keep clean sheets, and therefore they've needed more than one goal to win a game, and that's why they've fallen away. And in this game again, it proved to be the case. Obviously, get yourselves 3-1 up. If you can't exert control at that point, then Villa are always going to keep pushing out. They're always going to try and get back in the game. And once they get one goal to make it 3-2, it felt almost inevitable they were going to get another, because, as I say, the tails were up massively at that point and the crowd was on their side. And as I say, it's been a problem really for Liverpool all season, not quite having that level of control that the other sides around them have had. I'm speaking specifically about Arsenal and Manchester City, of course. I think that has been the big difference and the reason why they're going into the final game of the season with the ability to win the title, and Liverpool have been out of it now for a couple of weeks really. I think it's something that the new manager really has to think of or think about, because absolutely, I think Jurgen Klopp will say, to get Liverpool back in the Champions League this season with the rebuild they had to do in midfield, this was the right approach. That to throw caution to the wind at times and to be a very attacking side is the way to get yourselves back up the table. But I think if Liverpool now want to take that next step and get themselves back to what they were previously, which is a side that can compete for the Premier League and compete for the Champions League up until finals or the last day, then to get that right, I think they have to have more control. Arsenal and Manchester City have absolutely shown that that's the way forward, is limiting opposition opportunities as a starting point for your system, and then after that you can add all the brilliant attacking play and throw that in. And as I said, I think that's something that Slot can fix. It doesn't take massive signings, or there will be change at Liverpool this summer, but I think it's not something where you think you have to completely retool the squad to make this kind of football happen. It's a decision. You can see it in the play, the risk that Liverpool take in possession. Other sides around them are not doing that, and I think that is something that the manager can solve fairly easily, but I think it's something he absolutely has to. Because for Jurgen Klopp, this choice he's made this season, and we know it is a choice because of the sides he's put together before at Liverpool, have been very controlled, very physical in the centre of the park. But to go back to that football slot is, that is something he absolutely has to do, because I think you can't be playing basketball games every week and expect that luck isn't going to desert you sometimes, and it absolutely has in recent weeks for Liverpool. And did at times in this game, and that is the reason they've come away with a poor result tonight, thrown away what should have been 3 points and only ended up with one. And of course, as I say, it's probably the reason that they're not in the title race up until the final day. So something, I'm sure if Arne Slot had watched this game today, something for him to think about and something for him to come in and maybe fix, and that's maybe his first port of call, is bring some control back to this Liverpool team and see if that can make things a lot better. For me, that is the biggest issue this season. Even though it's been a good season, I think that's something that Liverpool absolutely need to look at. Now, I'm going to go through the individual performances one by one as usual, and I'll start with the goalkeeper, Alisson Becker. And obviously you're not going to praise a goalkeeper particularly highly when he concedes 3 goals. I think he's obviously very, very unlucky with the equaliser at the end in the way that flies in. Jhon Duran doesn't have any real idea about that, and Alisson is beaten as soon as it comes off him, so no criticism around that one. But I do wonder whether, even though they're very good strikes, both of them, the 2 other goals, Alisson will be slightly disappointed. Obviously one of them is from outside the box, and he's very rarely beaten from that position, and the Tielemans goal is just inside the box. And again, I wonder whether you'll think, could I have got down to that one, could I have done slightly better, just because we're so used to him pulling out a save in those situations. He makes 2 saves and concedes 3 goals, and he'll look at that ratio tonight, and with the distance on some of the strikes, will maybe think he possibly could have done a little better. But we know how good of a goalkeeper he is, so don't want to be too harsh on him on that front. But I do think with his high standards, he'll maybe look back on those with a little bit of disappointment involved. Now, moving to the defence now, talk about Trent Alexander-Arnold. And I thought, for me, not one of his best performances. I thought not as hugely influential as you would hope in terms of passing and creating things. I think he only creates 1 chance, and so not massively involved in that front. And also wins 1 out of his 6 ground duels. That shows that, defensively it didn't actually work for him that well either today. So I think when, sometimes, he's another one. It's like that risk or reward I was talking about with Jurgen Klopp and the way Liverpool have been set up this season. Trent is very much that. We talk about it all the time on these videos that, defensively he's not absolutely perfect, but what he can do on the ball is out of this world. But when he's not massively influencing things, as I didn't feel that he was tonight, and then he's only winning 1 out of his 6 ground duels in a defensive sense, that gives you a little bit of an issue in terms of he's not doing enough good to be in the team in those moments, I feel. And it didn't, no individual errors that you can really pin on him, but I think, those ground duels, you want to be doing better than that defensively, particularly if things aren't quite working out for you in the sense of what you're doing in possession. So for me, not a really perfect afternoon for Trent, or evening rather, I'll say, for Trent. And again, it's a little bit of a puzzle, isn't it, for the new manager to come in and solve. Is he going to use him as that inverted right back? Does he push him into midfield? Interesting situation around his contract, and I just think he's, there's so much upside there in terms of his game, and I just think it's a really interesting debate, and one that the new manager's got to solve about where he plays him. Can he keep him? Does he move him forward? It's a really interesting one around Trent, because when he has games like this, the critics, I feel, are too harsh at times, but when he has games like this, you can sometimes say, it wasn't a positive influence on the game as a whole for Liverpool. You'd absolutely have to admit that. Now, just move to the other fullback now, Joe Gomez, who I thought actually had a decent game. Obviously, he's coming for Andy Robertson at kind of short notice. Andy Robertson with a bit of a knock, not expected to keep him out of the final game of the season, but enough to keep him out of tonight. And that, as I say, thought Gomez did okay. I thought, 4 out of 6 round duels. 1 showed that he was okay in his defensive task there. Decent in possession as well. 92% of his passes completed. And he plays a role in Gakpo's goal as well, getting a shot away, forces the Martinez save, and then Gakpo taps it in at the back post. I mean, Gomez will be gutted not to have got his goal. He's running out of games this season now, isn't he? But I thought a largely decent performance from him. I thought it was interesting he was chosen ahead of Tsimikas as well. I think that is another one going into this summer that's one to talk about in terms of Kostas Tsimikas. Obviously, he only signed a new contract last year, but it's an interesting one. He's clearly considered the 3rd choice left back as things stand in the squad, and he wasn't even in the squad tonight. So I think that's one to really keep an eye on now. Just moving to the centre halves now and talk about Virgil van Dijk. Again, it's a game where Liverpool concede 3, so you feel like you should be absolutely criticising the centre backs, but it didn't really feel like a game where they did too much wrong. I think some of the issues were just largely in front of them, and runners getting in behind, and pressure not being put on the ball to clip a ball in behind. So didn't really think they had a lot to do with what was going wrong, and I think the numbers kind of reflect that. I mean, Van Dijk, 5 out of 8 duels won, which is perfectly fine. He completes 95% of his passes. I thought a couple of really good moments of defending as well, where he sprints in behind and eases a man off the ball. So, and you look around the goals again, not really anything you could point out that he did wrong, but it's just one of those games where things are going wrong in front of them, other problems are occurring, and suddenly you've conceded 3 goals. I don't think it's one where you could criticise Van Dijk for his performance at all, really, and I thought he was okay, largely in a game that Liverpool concede 3, but sometimes that can happen. And similarly to Quansah, I think the one thing you would say is when it goes to 1-1 in around that goal, he'll be disappointed with his involvement in that. He gets beaten in a one-on-one situation by Watkins, allows him to pull the ball back to Tielemans, and again, Quansah, he's very committed to focusing on his errors and looking back, and he watches a lot of footage, and I think he'll look at that moment and think, could I have got my feet moving better? What could I have done around that moment? But I think the other 2 goals, again, not anything you can put on the centre halves, I would say, really. And I think, his general statistics around his defending: 5 out of 8 duels won, 3 out of 3 tackles won. Really a decent performance. I mean, I was writing in my write-up that it was a composed performance from him, and when he put the goal for 1-1 behind him really quickly, and I stick by that because you can't just be results-based in terms of your analysis of the game. I thought it was a really decent performance from him on the defensive side of things, with one little bit of a downside. He was just let down in the way that Liverpool conceded the other 2 goals, and of course got to talk about with Quansah the fact he scores a goal of his own. Brilliant header at the back stick, gets up, nods it right into the top corner at the far side. A really brilliant finish, and there's so many upsides to this player, isn't there? And I think if he's adding goals as well as everything else, every other quality he's got at the age he is as well, given that there's so much more to come from him, I think he's a player to really get excited about. I mean, we already know that about him, don't we? But I think we've really, this season is going to be so good for him in terms of his development. I think he's got a massive role to play under Arne Slot, and he's in ahead of Konate at the moment, completely on merit. So fair play to him, and I think he's doing really well. And I don't think some of the goals that Liverpool conceded tonight should be put anywhere near him in terms of blame. And this was another performance where largely he showed a lot of positives. So really looking forward to what that means for him next season. Now moving to midfield now and talk about Wataru Endo, and I've criticised him at times in this recent dip that Liverpool have had, and said he's not quite been at the level he has before. And I thought today actually was largely much closer to that level. I thought Tottenham was a step forward for him, and again today it seems mad to say this when you concede 3, but I thought a lot of what he did was good. 6 out of 10 ground duels won, 2 out of 4 tackles, so much more around the numbers we'd been expecting in the part of the season where he was playing really well. 91% pass accuracy against Villa's press is really, really good. So a pretty steady performance from him there. I don't think he's not the world-class dominant 6 that maybe Liverpool do need eventually, or what they had in Fabinho when he was in his peak. But he's a steady Eddie in there, and I think today, even in a game that Liverpool didn't fully control, I didn't feel like Endo was a big problem in that. I think it was other players around him maybe causing issues at times. So I thought a decent-ish performance from him, as I say, steady more than anything. Now ahead of him, I speak about Harvey Elliott first, and I thought one of those games where again you see maybe some of the trade-offs. So I'll talk about some of the downsides. 1 out of 3 ground duels won. I think sometimes Villa's midfield look a little bit physical for him at times. 0 out of 1 tackle. One tackle he tried to make and didn't win it. 1 out of 3 on ground duels, as I say. I thought on the defensive side of things in a game like this, you could maybe see some of the downside of Elliott, that is that because the physicality's not there, he's never going to be absolutely massive or quick, is that when you put him in midfield in a tough away game like this against a side who are physically dominant, then he can sometimes find that a little bit difficult. Don't get me wrong, I'm not writing him off and saying he'll never be able to play in these games, because you look at Bernardo Silva for Man City and the way that they control games and make sure his lack of physicality isn't an issue when he's in central midfield. Elliott, for me, Bernardo Silva is very much the player we should be looking to emulate in terms of the way he plays the game. And I think if Liverpool do control games more going forward, as I said, I would like Slot to do, and I think that should be the aim for next season, then having someone like Elliott in there is not going to be a problem. But I thought today, in Jurgen Klopp football, you did see some of the downsides of putting him in central midfield and expecting him to clear up the mess of constantly, Liverpool constantly turning over the ball. He's not that sort of player. But we did also, of course, and I will talk about this now, we saw the upside of Harvey Elliott. So obviously the goal that makes it 1-0 to Liverpool, he has a big hand in that in terms of running in behind, putting the cross in that Martinez eventually spills into his own net. He also gets the assist for the Quansah goal, a lovely ball to the back stick. His crossing is absolutely brilliant, and 2 chances created in the match as well. So as I said, the downsides that you saw in this game for me aren't really his fault, and all the upside is there. And again, he's another player, can't wait to see what he does under Slot, because I think he's took huge steps forward, similarly to Quansah this season, and there's even more to come from him, both only 21 years old. So yeah, a lot to be excited around those two. And Elliott, for me, another one where he's contributing to goals being scored and showing that he can be a big player for Liverpool going forward. Now, just finish up the midfield now with the man who I thought was the poorest performer for Liverpool on the night, and a big source of a lot of their issues, if I'm honest, and a bit of a surprise to be saying that about a player who I thought was in magnificent form not too long ago and emerged as the most influential player in the Liverpool team for me. Maybe there's a little bit of fatigue to do with this one, actually, the fact that he's fallen away. Of course, they're talking about Alexis McAllister, and I think, as I mentioned fatigue there, and I think he just seemed a yard short of it all night, really, in terms of his challenges. 3 out of 9 ground duels won. I felt like he got passed around far too easy by Aston Villa at times. Defensively just wasn't contributing there, and obviously he only makes one chance as well, which again, when he was in top form, he was getting 4 or 5 a match. He was massively influential in terms of Liverpool's attacking play, and that wasn't quite there. And for me, it's not just the fact he wasn't winning challenges. I think he was directly responsible, really, for 2 goals as well. Now, again, for the goal that makes it 1-1, I struggle here to unpick this. Is this Jurgen Klopp's fault and what he's telling the players, or is it McAllister making a poor decision? And the fact is, Liverpool turned the ball over. McAllister gets it in the number 6 position. Now, what Manchester City and Arsenal would do in that situation is move the ball up quite slowly, quite carefully, just to make sure that all the setup they want is to basically wait till all the centre halves are up, around the halfway line, or even more aggressive than that, and pen the opposition in, and then start to play football and start to try and find the killer pass. Therefore, if the ball gets turned over and you can't create the goal, then you've got the opposition penned in. You're in a really good setup for pressing. But what McAllister does, and again, I don't know if this is because Klopp wants the team to be aggressive and constantly on the front foot, or it's because he just made a poor decision. What he does is, when he receives the ball, is instantly tries to play the killer pass. Villa easily collect it, and it's one pass then into Watkins, and he's one-on-one with Jarell Quansah. That is not a situation you want to be in. And for me, I'm almost certain that the manager's instructions is a big part of that, because he wants them to be front-footed. He wants that risk-reward ratio that I'm talking about. But it just, for me, the downsides of that is spelled out completely by that goal for 1-1, because you've gone from a situation where Liverpool have turned the ball over, they've got it, they can set an attack up if they want, they've got players flying forward, and they waste it and turn it into a massive opportunity for Watkins to square Quansah up one-on-one. Now, Watkins, I don't think you can really blame Quansah in that situation too much, in that I think you wish he could have done better and think he can do better in that situation. But I think, Watkins is a very, very good Premier League player, having an incredible season, who, it doesn't matter who he's squaring up in that 1v1 situation, he would likely beat them. I mean, I don't think Gabriel would stop him in that situation. I don't think Ruben Diaz, John Stones would stop him in that situation, because centre-halves, they're not built to be put in situations where they're exposed that badly in one-on-one situations. But the fact that Liverpool do that, it makes your centre-halves look bad at times. And I think, McAllister with a poor pass was a problem with that. But also, as I say, is it what Jurgen Klopp's telling him to do? I'm not sure. But either way, it was a poor moment, and I think that kind of set the tone for the game. And it was a poor moment from McAllister, because if you're going to take that risk, you have to make the pass. And again, he's responsible for another goal late in the game that makes it 3-2. He gives the ball away there, and Jhon Duran nips in and puts the ball away. And it's a poor pass in a really dangerous position where Liverpool just needed to play it safe. And to do that twice in a game that you end up drawing 3-3, I just think is pretty unforgivable. And as I say, I think his form has fallen away recently. Again, is that fatigue? We will have to see. Can the new manager sort it? And there's been incredible upside this season. Let's not forget about that. He's clearly a class player who's worth a lot more than 35 million that Liverpool paid for him. But I think we've seen a dip in recent weeks, and that's something the new manager is going to have to correct. And we want to see a more consistent season from him next season as a whole. And let's hope we can see that now. I'll move into the forwards quickly now, and not really loads to speak about here, I don't think. I thought they were all kind of decent, if not, they weren't quite at world-class level, but I thought they put in sort of decent performances. I just thought that some of the things that were going on in midfield and the lack of control there caused too many problems for Liverpool to be on the front foot enough. And start with Salah, 1 shot, which is, you'd like him to take a lot more shots in the match, but 2 chances created. 5 out of 7 ground duels won. I thought he looked dangerous every time he got the ball. Villa didn't have a real control over him. I thought he looked dangerous. Again, I think you saw at moments that he's not quite as quick as he used to be in terms of those balls in behind. He didn't quite have the ability to get onto the ones that he maybe previously would. But I still think, in terms of what he does creatively, his ability to get the ball up the pitch, it's massive for me that he stays for at least another season. I don't think he's ever going to be a 44 goal a season man again, as he was in that first season at Liverpool, or even the numbers he put up after that. But in terms of what he does provide in goals and assists and that creativity, I just think he's got still a big role to play for Liverpool next season. I thought his form has recovered after that dip that he had recently, so I thought this was, if not his most influential performance, I thought he was decent in most regards. And similar with Cody Gakpo, really, 2 shots, he gets his goal back, easy one to tuck away, but I thought carried on his good form in terms of goal scoring, and he's been, he's the only one of the attackers really whose form hasn't quite dipped recently, and he's kept that up, and you deserve to be in the side if you keep scoring goals, and he absolutely does, and that's what's keeping Núñez out at the moment. And I thought 4 out of 10 ground duels won as well. Would have liked to see him more involved, but again, as I say, that's a problem that was kind of behind that front line. Really didn't see enough of the ball in good areas, so not his fault. So good to see him score again and again. Interested to see that battle between him and Núñez, if they're both here next season, how that sort of plays out, because he's clearly ending the season the stronger. And I just finish up with Luis Diaz. Doesn't actually take a shot tonight, but 4 chances created, which I thought, again, he's another one. He has kept his form around this recent period and looked dangerous. 5 out of 14 ground duels won, which is incredible how many he's involved in. Probably on the low side in terms of winning them, but he was busy all night, and he wins 2 out of 3 tackles as well. So always does that defensive work as well, doesn't he? I think, again, there's a question mark over him going into this summer in terms of, do you need another killer? Does that interest from PSG and Barcelona turn into anything, and does that give Liverpool a decision to make? But for now, he seems to be ending the season quite strongly and doing pretty well. So I thought a decent performance from him today, and again, none of that front line really could kind of put on any huge criticism, I think, for the result. Although for Diaz, I think the one moment he will look back on is a headed opportunity he has in the first half. Probably should have done better. Again, that feeds into that discussion around him. Do Liverpool need someone more ruthless in that position, and could they replace him this summer? We will have to see. And the subs weren't on for too long, but I don't really want to go into them individually, because I don't think they were to blame for what happened in that part of the match as individuals. It was more collectively that they hurt Liverpool in terms of making so many subs seemed to disorganise them a little bit. They didn't seem to be ready for the pace of the game, and I don't think it was individuals. I think it was just the manager throwing them in so late. It kind of just disrupted Liverpool, and that didn't help them organisational wise in those final moments. And I thought losing Endo maybe even as well as an organiser in that central part of the pitch wasn't particularly handy for Liverpool either. So I thought as much Klopp's subs this season have been an absolute been massive for Liverpool, I thought he kind of got it wrong in this one, and he probably would say similar actually around the Tottenham game as well, is that he actually disrupted rhythm rather than sort of gave Liverpool the legs to see things out. But I guess he's going to think that, well, there's not been an awful lot riding on these last 2 games, so he's just trying to get players minutes on the pitch that he feels deserve it in training or whatever. So yeah, not one I think he'll be losing too much sleep about, to be honest. And that's true, the result as a whole tonight, because ultimately this has been Jurgen Klopp's penultimate game in charge at Liverpool, and the next one will be his final game. I'll be there at Anfield, of course, to watch that game against Wolves and see those emotional scenes as Jurgen Klopp is finally sent off. So that's going to be an incredible event to be at, really, because I'm sure he's going to get an incredible send off from the supporters that he absolutely deserves, and so easy to put behind the fact that Liverpool have thrown away 3 points tonight, because ultimately it doesn't matter, and it's all about sending off Jurgen Klopp in the right way, isn't it? Now, do let me know in the comments what you thought of the performance. How you think Liverpool is shaping up, and what you think it all means for Arne Slot and the big decisions he's got to make going into next season. And as ever, if you can like and subscribe, that's always hugely helpful. And as I said, I will be back for the Wolves game. Such an emotional occasion ahead. Looking forward to it, but also kind of dreading it in a way. But as I say, I'll be back for the build up to that, and then my match review from Anfield. It's going to be a very emotional one. See you soon.